to put this in physical terms, right? Eric is what, 6'2", something tall?
1 and shrinking.
6'1". Eric is 6'1". I'm 5'6".
It's
right?
so cute.
If there's something on the top shelf, right? And Will was like, Brendan, get that thing off the top shelf. And there's no ladder or step stool or anything. I can try really hard all day. I'm never getting the thing off the top shelf, right? Mm-hmm. And then Eric can roll in and grab it and be like, here you go. What was so hard? Because Eric is like physically neurotypical and I am physically ADHD. And in this case, and it's easy to miss. Oh, you have this deficit. Like you're a full 7 inches shorter than me, not to mention arm length, right? I mean, I've got ups. I can jump really high. There are still shelves that I'm not going to get to. And so that's kind of what's going on for your kid is he just doesn't, he can try hard all day and it might look like he's lazy, but he's not because lazy doesn't exist. Lazy is learned helplessness brought about by a lack of skills. He needs to learn some skills.
ADHD Rewired, episode 308. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups, and you can learn all about our intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. You can do all of this at our website, ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. We are here for our live monthly Q&A, recording this on January 14th. If you are listening to this on the podcast, happy February. You can join us if you're listening to this today, the day it came out on February. I didn't plan ahead quickly enough, so it's whatever the second Tuesday in February is. Join us at 12:30 p.m. Central Time for this Q&A. So we are here with Will Kerb of Hacking Your ADHD. Hello, Will.
Hey there, everybody.
And Brendan Mahan of
What's
ADHD
up,
Essentials. Hello. Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
All right. So we are going to kick it off right away. We have a Madeline who has a question. And instead of me even reading her question, she's just going to ask it. Madeline, go for it.
So when I don't feel well, either because I'm sick or some sort of other illness or I've just pushed myself too hard, I have a habit of going either between the I'm not going to do anything at all because I don't feel well, or I don't care that I don't feel well, everything still needs to get done. And I'm having a hard time finding the happy medium between the two of them. Can you relate, or like what kind of tricks that you might have with that?
Well, I would say that I'm a big man baby when I'm sick, and I don't feel good. Like I can't filter out like not feeling well. So when you don't feel well, I think it's our brain's way of saying, slow the F down and take care of yourself. And then you can go back to do everything. Because I know for me, in times where I've just tried to push through, it backfires and I end up getting more sick. What about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly the same thing where it's like, I will continuously push because I'm like, oh, well. And well, especially because with kids, I can't just be like, sorry, guys, you don't get to, mom has to do absolutely everything right now. So I try to push my way through my sickness, and that always makes me more sick. And I mean, like, I've hurt my back this month, and I still shoveled my driveway this morning because, you know, I'm a go-getter.
Will, not one of the smarter things you've done. Really? You shoveled your driveway with back? You just went to the pharmacy yesterday for muscle relaxants, and today you were shoveling your driveway.
Well, it was light shoveling. But yeah, it's one of the things, like, in retrospect, I'm like, yeah, I should ease off the gas a little when I'm sick and hurt. And it's a really hard thing to do. And I think it's just staying really in touch with yourself about like, okay, before you like, okay, I'm feeling sick, before I start things, doing a little bit of mindfulness and like checking in yourself. Is this really going to make a difference? And this would be also a great time to use like the one thing question. What's the one thing that would make me feel better? Probably not shoveling the driveway.
I prioritize, like, I think I kind of happy medium this one a little bit, where if there's things that have to get done, I'm doing those things, right? Like if my kids need to go to school, I'm going to make sure they get to school. If they need a lunch, I'm going to judge what kind of sick I am. And I may or may not be involved in the making of that lunch, depending on contagion and those kinds of things. But if there's like a Cub Scout meeting, I'm not going. If it's a dojo night, I'm probably not going because I don't want to infect everybody else. And if there's stuff I have to do at home, again, it's a prioritization thing. Like, oh, I've got 48 podcast episodes in the bank and I'm supposed to interview someone today. I can postpone that and take a nap. If I have a client, that's a different animal, right? Like then it's a little more of a careful thought process on, does this client really need to meet with me today, or can I ask them to reschedule? And I'm getting better at asking for help when I need help. But I try to happy medium things. But happy medium means there are times when I'm still doing things. I'm just not doing all the things. And I'm also not slamming on the brakes and doing nothing. It's just less.
One of the things that I see was I found the feedback really interesting on was during December when I had the flu, and I posted it. That it was right after episode 300, and I knew that 301 was not coming out because I was so sick. I ended up in the hospital because did you know that you can get dehydration from a fever, and then like I got delirious. It was I was literally laid out on the kitchen floor. I could not get up. I was just like begging my wife I'm like, just give me a pillow. I just want to sleep. She called her parents, and her dad literally like picked me up and like brought me to the car. To like I was not even and I don't even remember like any of that either. So you got to take care of yourself. And but when I posted on Facebook that there would be no episode this week thanks to the flu, so many people were just giving me kind of kudos for like taking care of my health and like, good, don't worry about it. And I was like, oh, but I gotta get that. And it's like, that's silly. Like take care of your health, cause if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. Mm-hmm. So Madeline, is that helpful for you?
Sure. I found it. So what I basically
the sure
heard
was not convinced. That was not a convincing answer.
It was more along the lines of, mindfulness and evaluation, and then prioritization. I can't pronounce this today. I cannot.
Prioritization.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean when we are not feeling well, when we are sick, it doesn't matter what our priorities are. We got to take care of ourselves, and I know that can be hard because sometimes it's just being able to communicate with somebody else that, hey, I can't do this thing right now. I'm not. I'm not feeling well.
And also be aware of the guilt, shame, anxiety response that can hide in there too. Right? Like, I'm sick. I'm not doing as much as I usually do. I feel bad about the fact that I'm not doing as much as I usually do. Now I feel guilty. Now I feel shameful. Now I feel anxious. I'm going to use the anxiety for fuel and do everything and then crash really hard and not be able to do anything. You've got to kind of guard against that.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I think,
go ahead, Will.
I was going to say a point that Brendan made earlier too. Asking for help when you're sick is really important. It's hard. Like a lot of us have a lot of trouble asking for help, but like it's every time I've asked for help and I needed it, it was the best decision I've ever made. Like I would have just completely crashed if I hadn't asked for help when I needed it.
Yeah. And the go kind of mode, I mean, for me, that's something that I've had to learn because like once I'm going, like I can just keep going. So I've had to over time learn like what my threshold is because like my natural sort of like, okay, I'm tired today doesn't really kick in. It's like the next day or two, or I just can't get anything done because I completely just like exhausted myself beyond that point. So part of it is just to be observant of your tendencies around your energy level.
Well, another thing that a lot of people, it seems like when they get sick, they hit the pause button. Whereas when I get sick, I hit the stop button. If that makes sense. Like if I get sick and I do rest, it's like even after I'm feeling better, I'm still just acting like I was sick still, if that makes sense.
Well, when you're sick, it also takes a while it was a good probably 2 weeks after like I was symptom free with the flu until I really felt like back to normal. So it's, just having some patience and know that we are not machines. We are, animals. And when animals get sick, they need time to recover.
Yeah. The American health or work conditions are like culture really encourages us to pretend that we're not sick for more than a day at a time. And that's just not how things work.
Right.
My father-in-law got a bonus for not taking sick days. And I was like, that's wrong. That's so wrong. You shouldn't that should not be a thing you get a bonus for.
Congratulations, you got lucky.
Like, remember that in school when the kids would get the perfect attendance award? It's like, so you're awarding just because someone has a good immune system? Like, that doesn't seem fair.
Or they just came to school sick anyways and got everyone else sick.
Right.
Yeah. My kids are not getting the perfect attendance award because we're going skiing on their birthday, and I'm sure they'd rather go skiing than get the perfect attendance award. So
that's great. All right, man. I hope that was helpful. Let's go to another question here. We had Blake. Blake said he doesn't go live. Let me pull Blake up here. Hey there, Blake.
Hey.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I am good. What is your question?
So I wrote it down so that I could ask it. So I'm just going to read it.
All right.
It may sound too professional. I decided I wanted some reliable accountability, so I made a plan. I thought I'll, 1, use Mighty Network to connect with people, although not clear what I'll do. 2, use the How to ADHD Patreon Discord to meet people I can ask to keep me accountable, although I don't know for what yet. 3, I'll use Google Hangouts to get support from my core friends from college. 4, I'll ask for help from my men's group and keep them updated on my day-to-day choices. Something feels wrong about this vision of accountability. So, what of these structures might be best to start and focus on, if that's even the right question for this dilemma?
So my starting question is, what feels wrong about this? Because it sounds like you have an amazing support system.
I haven't. I guess the caveat to all of this is I haven't been able to act on any of this. And I've just ignored all forms of communication with people. Okay.
So is it an issue of deciding? Like too many options?
I thought that I could do all 4 things. I would just come up with some strategy and know what to say to who, when, or how to break it down. Instead, it's just led to me not reaching out to anyone or really responding to messages.
Okay, so it's not like necessarily the dilemma of the Cheesecake Factory, where there's just way too many options on that menu.
No, it may be an overcommitment thing.
Okay,
but not cheesecake.
Are there certain? So if you've set up 4 different things. You have the coaching rewired groups on the Mighty Network. You have the How to ADHD Discord. You have Google Hangouts from your friends, and you also have a men's group. Are there certain things that you have found in the past to be most helpful from each of those specific groups?
From the ADHD related ones, those are new and just lots of experimenting. Friends have been for sanity checks on big life things that are going on. And the men's group has been like a source of discipline and reflection on the day-to-day and week-to-week choices in life.
Okay, so those last two sort of sound like heart check-ins, like where you're at just emotionally. And the first two sound like they might be more like just the stuff you got to get done.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Brendan, what was your question?
The first two are I'll use Mighty Network to connect with people, not clear what I'll do, and use How to ADHD, Patreon, Discord to keep people, to meet people who can help me keep me accountable, although I don't know for what yet. Some of this might be like, what's your mission statement? Like, what's the purpose of all of this accountability? If you don't have a reason to be held accountable that's clear, it's going to be hard to get people to keep you accountable.
Yes, that makes sense. I feel that I need accountability to do things like figure out how to get accountability for the things I need.
Can I tweak that a little bit? Can I offer a tiny change?
Yes, please.
You might want to, and I don't even know that this is accountability so much as it's maybe a brainstorming session that you can do once, but it sounds like you need help figuring out what it is that you want to do so that you can then ask for help with accountability. Like, what are you doing? Is it work? Are you trying to create a project or a I don't know, build a yacht? Like, what are you doing that you need to be held accountable for?
Now it's a routine, a very specific health routine and routine because I'm job searching. So that's just a input-based task.
Okay.
Two things.
Yep.
The health routine and then the job routine, right? So that's what you want to talk to people about in terms of keeping you accountable. Is that what you're doing?
Yes. Mostly through failures or victories. Like, oh man, this thing I really cared about, it's working. And then, oh, it's falling apart. Any ideas? And it's kind of like simplistic in that way. Other than like ARC coaching groups, there are all these worksheets. There were worksheets following up with people. It did something magical that I don't remember how to do other than to just pull the worksheets out again and just like sit with people in study hall doing them.
So you've had this idea to pull the worksheets out again. Have you done that?
I pulled them out and started on them.
Okay. What about setting up your daily task list?
I have a daily task list.
Okay. And is that a task list that you can share with someone else or even posting on the Mighty Network?
I can do that.
Okay.
I can make all these things known to other people.
You know, also in one of the things you can also do in the alumni community there is if you want to let people know that you're planning on being in an adult study hall specifically to work on job search stuff, so you're making that public commitment and then you're showing up there. That's another way you can, sometimes we just need accountability to have our derriere in the chair to work on something specific.
Yeah.
Right. So instead of looking at like because sometimes we don't even know what the outcome is that we need to go after, but we know we need to be spending time in that domain. And so instead of looking at targeting a specific outcome, look at targeting a specific amount of time working on something around that thing. And sometimes when we're just spending time there, then we get clarity on what we need to do.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially spending the time as opposed to aiming to create the result. I wonder if I'm blocked by needing that brainstorming then, that I can't decide what to do to talk to people because I feel I just need time to just ramble and brainstorm with people.
And sometimes that's really important. So who can you do that with?
I guess I can ask for that from any of these.
Yeah. So pick one.
Mighty Network, you're getting the message.
Awesome. All right. And sometimes if you're like these are all some good options, do the flip a coin method, right? Like, where it doesn't really matter, just picking one.
Mm-hmm. Also, when you're just asking for accountability, the best things I found that worked is being specific and asking people when you want, asking people to check in with you later, because that follow up is like really the important thing. Because if you're just like left floating, like, well, I didn't do it and no one checked, I guess I wasn't really accountable. And they can't do that unless you specifically tell them what you want to be accountable for. So I think that brainstorming idea is great. So you can figure out exactly what you want, and then you can ask those questions of your various groups.
Yeah, okay. This is where you want to start setting those SMART goals, right? So you don't want to say, I'm going to look for a job. You want to say, I'm going to spend 3 hours looking for a job, or I'm going to apply to 5 jobs or whatever. And if you don't, that's okay. If you say you're going to apply to 5, you only apply to 3, it's not the end of the world. That's still 3 more than you might have otherwise applied for. And having that specific, measurable, accountable, sort of time-based stuff, that's going to get you to where you want to be. And it's also going to help people hold you accountable because they're going to have a better idea what to look for. And
remember too that accountability is not, it's not like you're asking someone to nag you. It is not someone that's going to make you do the thing. Accountability, all it is, it's a reporting mechanism that allows you to report back to somebody based on something that you said you want to do. And it allows it, I think one of the both challenging but valuable parts of accountability is it forces you to clarify your thought process and observe your own actions and behaviors. Because if you don't do it, the thing that you wanted to be accountable to do, that's also okay. What you need to do though is then share, communicate what happened, right? And I know we do this in the groups where it's not a judgmental, why didn't you do it? It's a curious, why didn't you do it? What happened? Right. And so it's helps you. I mean, there's regularly, I'll pick like a top priority for the week, and then come Tuesday or Wednesday as I'm working on stuff, I realize that I picked the wrong priority. Right. And so if I'm asking for accountability around, my top priority, I can just explain like, oh, it wasn't until I was doing this thing that I realized that needed to actually come first. And that's something that just happens a lot to me, because part of ADHD is our brain's sequencing of information doesn't always happen real well. So that's why I think just sometimes get your derriere in the chair and things will kind of unfold. All right. I hope that was helpful, Blake.
That was super helpful. Thank you.
Thanks for your question. All right. Let's pick, I almost removed Blake. That's the wrong button. Disable talking. That's the right button. Okay. Let's do one more quick question, and then we were going to take a quick break. Have you spotted one? I got one from Alexis, who's asking, how do you choose a non-therapist to be your accountability partner, more than just being a friend and doing things together? And this kind of piggybacks off of, I think, what we were just talking about. I think you got to have an understanding about what accountability is and what it isn't, right? Again, accountability is not someone that's going to make you do something, right? I look at accountability as a mirror, right? It's a mirror that's going to come back to you. You put something out there, and it comes back to you where you have to sort of check in with that person. And sometimes it takes trial and error. You might ask a friend to say, hey, will you ask me about this? And you may find that the friend, while maybe well-meaning, makes you feel really judged and shamed. And, so that's also a thing that you can explore is, was it the way that friend asked, or was there more of maybe a heightened sensitivity, to the questioning? Will, it looks like you were pondering something there.
Oh, I recently, started up with an accountability group again, because, with the, all the ARC-19 admins, and yeah, it's really just about setting some ground rules up in the beginning too is really helpful, because we're like, okay, this is how long we're going to meet. This is what how we're going to have those meetings, because it's really easy for an accountability team or partnership to fall apart if you don't know why you're there. And so it's a lot of just about having conversations with potential partners and
revisiting, like continuously revisiting to see, hey, is this structure working for us? Is this approach working for us? Because when you're trying new accountability structures and supports, you're experimenting. You're making some hypotheses that if you say that you share with this person or with this group that you're going to do this thing, and you ask them to check in with you in a certain way because you think that's going to be helpful, and you find that it's actually not helpful, then go back to the drawing board and say, you know what? Like, that is exactly what I wanted you to do. I don't think that worked for me. Let's try a different approach. And, that's really what ADHD management is also about. It's you make a hypothesis of something that you think is going to help. You try it out. You see what the results were. If it works, great. If not, keep trying something different, right? So it's, and different people are also motivated in different ways around accountability. I know for myself that if I have to know that someone is also counting on me to hold them accountable for something, for their accountability on me to work, right? If it's just a one-way thing, it doesn't work well for me, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm right there with you. If I've got an accountability partner, we need to both be doing stuff, and hopefully stuff that's vaguely connected, right? Like if I struggle with like, oh, I'm going to work on losing 5 pounds and you're going to work on paying your bills. Those are not even close to the same. And that makes it harder for me to have that accountability partnership work. But if it's, I'm going to lose 5 pounds and they're going to work on like running a mile or something or sleeping, those are closer and makes it easier. And if we're both looking to lose weight, it's even better.
Yeah. I mean, a common thing that people will use accountability for is getting to bed, cause it's a shared interest, a shared struggle. So
you get to say goodnight to each other.
Yep. And you get to say good morning. You get to share your screenshot of your sleep app that you're using, which will then show whether or not you actually went to bed at the time you said you were going to, because that graph will show like that little very top of the chart squiggly line showing that like you were doing something on your phone for at least 45 minutes after you said you were going to bed. It just happened to me more times than I want to. Yeah. So there's that accountability, right? But it's got to be shame-free accountability. All right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we will answer some more of your questions. We will be right back. Our registration kickoff event for our spring coaching and accountability groups is next week.
If you're thinking of joining this group, I'll say one thing: be prepared for change.
Change opens up opportunities for growth. So go ahead and change things up. We change things all the time, like the color of our hair, wearing new clothes. But what about changing the way we show up in the world and the way we do things? Take the time now to change the way you manage your ADHD. Go to coachingrewired.com and click on the big green button to get invited to our spring coaching and accountability groups. Our registration kickoff event is only 1 week away on Tuesday, February 18th at 12 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern. Listen as participants from our last season share their stories.
Before this group, I was often angry, anxious, and frustrated with myself if ADHD got the best of me. And now I'm more accepting that if that happens, I will be kind to myself because I realize I'm only human and sometimes ADHD wins.
The biggest takeaway that I took, the importance of community, and by having the community when you fail, everybody else is there to pick you up and help you come back on your feet. And they're right there beside you all the step of the way. That was very big for me.
I had a couple takeaways. For me, I realized I didn't really know about what it meant to accept ADHD, that I didn't accept that it was causing some of my challenges versus thinking it was a personal flaw. And I didn't really think that I needed to take the second pill feel during the day, I probably don't need it. So I'll just like not take it. And I learned that it is causing some of my challenges. It's not just a personal flaw. Also, another big takeaway was that working harder and longer doesn't equal more productive, and that developing and following routines gives me more freedom to reserve my EF for higher level decisions.
Don't hesitate. Sign up today. Registration is by invitation only. So to get invited to our registration kickoff event on February 18th, go to coachingrewired.com and click on the big green button. Our spring sessions start April 8th. You'll learn more about the coaching groups at coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com.
If you're thinking about joining this group, you're already halfway there. Stop thinking and join.
Do it. It will be life-changing.
Thank you to all of our patrons who make this podcast possible with your contributions. A special welcome and thank you to MJ, who became a patron last week at the $150 a month level. Thank you so much for your generous support. Consider becoming a patron today. Give a gift that makes sense to you, and we'll give a gift right back with perks. If you value these podcasts, our community, and everything else that we do, become a patron at adhdrewired.com/Patreon. Check out the perks starting at just $5 a month. And remember, you can join me and a small group of other patrons every fourth Tuesday of the month for a group coaching call on Zoom if you support us at $25 a month or more. Our next call will be on February 25th at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget to add that to your calendars. Whatever your reason for giving and whatever amount you are able to give, thank you so much. It really does help, and it really does mean a lot to me. Become a patron at adhdrewired.com/Patreon. That's adhdrewired.com/Patreon. And thanks. All right, and we are back. We have Andrew, who is joining us to ask a question. Andrew, what is your question?
I'm going to refer back to when I asked it. So basically, I either feel that everything's going crazy, the world's falling apart, or I feel like $1 million, everything's going well. Usually, I guess maybe I'm just ignoring things, or I honestly don't know. So it's really hard and really mentally taxing to constantly be switching between the two. Like, is there any tips you could have for like more stability in that realm?
First question is, how's your sleep?
Getting better.
Can you describe it?
Well, I used to barely sleep. So I was talking to Brendan earlier, and I was likely using a lot of the anxiety and built up stuff as fuel. So that made a lot of sense there. And recently I've been going to bed actually somewhat consistently. I'm getting close to 6 hours, which is good for me. I know I still need more, but it's progress from where I was at.
And just to kind of reiterate this point is that when we are in a constant sort of state of sleep deficit, our self-awareness around how much it actually impacts us is so poor. And there's been studies that have really shown this and have done these tests to compare actual performance versus what someone thinks their performance is. And it's a pretty significant difference.
Interesting. Definitely look into that. I like a lot of the research-based things. I like to see the data behind it.
And so let me ask you another follow-up question about your sleep. So you said you're getting about 6 hours, which is good for you. What about your actual, like the time you're going to bed and the time you're waking up?
I'll pull up my app here. I love Sleep as Android. It's amazing. I've been using it for over a year now. The only thing that scares me is the sleep deficit one. That's that chart kills me. I'm sorry, could you repeat your question? It's very ADHD of me.
Can I repeat the question? That's the hardest question I ever
got the app
asked.
open though, so I made progress. You asked me to look for something.
The question was when you fall asleep compared to when you wake up, as opposed to just when you go to bed.
No, I actually think it was the total time versus your actual like schedule of going to bed and waking up.
Oh, okay. So that's the part that I've been focusing on recently, because before it was kind of, I was getting some more sleep, but it wasn't as consistent. And I found that over time, even if I was getting slightly less, getting on a more regular schedule was beneficial. So without getting into any of the specific data, I have seen a lot of improvement with that. So I guess just trying to make more priority on sleep, I guess, is the main suggestion that you have.
Well, that's typically my first starting point, because if your sleep is out of whack, then you're going to be out of whack.
All day.
All right. What about exercise?
Oh, I used to do a lot. I'm still an athlete, but I don't have as much time anymore. So I still try to go out and play tennis every week or so, but I really want to get more into that. But a lot of it's being so far behind, it's hard to give up and become more behind. I know in the long term, I know it's better to do that now. Like, I know that in my head, it's hard.
I 110% agree with you that it is better to do the exercise now. You know, when we tell ourselves that, you know, we can do the self-care thing once we've gotten our stuff done, we are then trading our sense of self-worth for our productivity, which is which is an arrangement that you will never win at. Right.
Brendan's smiling because he said the exact same thing about 2 hours ago.
Right. And so when your inner voice is saying, no, you have more to do, you slacked off, you did that thing and you got to get this stuff done, and you're spinning your wheels, stop and go get your heart rate up. Like, go do the exercise. I exercise for my brain. My body tends to benefit from that as well. But I look at at cardio exercise as non-negotiable as part of my ADHD management.
I'll try it out this week, and I'll fill you in, Brendan next week, and how that turns out.
Okay.
I appreciate your time, guys.
All right. And the sleep and exercise is just the first two. So
we got diet.
You got diet. Yep.
Are you hydration?
Yep.
Hydration. I'm all over the hydration. Diet definitely has room for improvement, though.
Speaking of hydration, whether you're here live or listening to this on the podcast, just take a moment and grab a sip of water. It's amazing. Water is like grease for your brain. Like it's a motor, right? And if we don't drink, our brain just kind of gets like sluggish, and so water is Will's really good at reminding me about water. Diet, yep. I won't even recommend anything specific other than just be observant of how you feel after eating different types of food.
I gotcha. Can I give my recommendation?
Yeah.
Yes.
Supermarket perimeter. Hit the fruits and vegetables, go up to the back, ignore the bakery. Meat, dairy, go home. There might be some stuff in the middle that maybe is like Ziploc bags or something. I don't know. But by and large, shop the supermarket perimeter and you'll be doing okay.
Meat and dairy sounds good to me. So it's good stuff for me.
Skip fast food. I know after fast food, I am way more likely to have some sort of outburst with my kids. The quality of your food matters a ton.
You know what my favorite fast food is? Hard-boiled eggs.
Oh.
They're quick. It's amazing.
Well, when you said that, it reminded me, I used to, when I had my clinical practice, I was working with this family and they were doing some sort of experimentation with their diet. And this girl that I was working with was experimenting, and then she wrote this little book. And the title of her book was French Fries Make Me Sad, which I just thought was so brilliant, because it's just so on point, just identifying like, all right, these kinds of foods, while delicious, are not helpful for the brain. And we, because we have ADHD, we don't have the luxury of like not really getting to we have to think about our brain all the time. Otherwise, we're going to be on this roller coaster as you described, and it's going to be a struggle. And so we have to be doing things that really activate that conscientiousness, that self-monitoring, because otherwise it's just going to be like we are on a roller coaster that we didn't sign up for. So I hope that's helpful for you.
Oh, it's really helpful. Thanks.
Do you have one more thing?
And try to find foods that make you want to eat other good foods. Right?
That's good.
Like hard-boiled eggs make me want to eat more salad. And apples make me want to eat hard-boiled eggs and salad. Like that kind of stuff. Whereas French fries make me want to eat pizza. So
it all comes back to hard-boiled eggs.
Hard-boiled eggs are awesome. Get that little meditative moment when you're peeling them. Best.
All right, let's go to another question. We just answered Andrew's.
We have an Autumn that would like to go live.
All right. Autumn, what is your question?
Hello. My 7th grader is struggling with school. I just looked at his grades. We're at the end of the semester, and all his test grades are failing. We're really struggling with motivation, and the other part of it is he's inattentive, and we haven't been able to find the right meds, and now he's resistant because he's had so many side effects.
He's resistant to taking them.
Yeah, he's resistant to even trying anymore.
Okay.
What's the messaging he's getting from you around that?
I kind of haven't really talked to him a whole lot about it. I told him, basically, you need to try, because his younger 2 siblings, they take Adderall and they have no problems with it. But it didn't work for him. So it was like, okay, well, let's keep trying things. And finally, I was just like, okay, we'll take a break. But I made him a doctor's appointment today because I'm like, okay, we need to readdress the med side of it as well as everything else.
Okay. Brendan, what you got?
Background stuff is there a 504 IEP situation going on?
There's an IEP, but it pretty much just covers speech.
Okay. You want to revisit that IEP with your team. So special education teacher, classroom teacher, maybe the guidance counselor as well, because you need to figure out where the breakdown is happening at school. If he's failing all his classes, something's going on. So there needs to be more communication with school and from school to home around what the breakdown is. And if it's emotional and school resistance and that kind of stuff, then you want to loop in your guidance counselor. You want to activate your team on this, like yesterday. Although since yesterday's not an option, today is good. And then you also want to talk to your kid about what are his experiences, what's going on for him. And you want to have that conversation in as safe a way as possible. So you don't want to be like, what's going on with school, right, child? Because that'll go south in a hurry.
Don't use that voice.
Yeah. Don't raise an evil eyebrow.
His dad's also watching it. I just looked over at him. He points at himself. That's how I would address this.
You don't want to do it that way. You want to be like, hey, so we looked at the report card and what's going on? Like, how come?
And I think it's important to even say like that you're not angry, that you're concerned, and that you want to help work on this together. I mean,
and quite often that's how I handle him is I'm like, okay, bud, you got to do better. And I kind of felt
but
like
let's rephrase even that part, right? Let's say, look, pal, I know you want to do better, and I know you would be doing better if you could. So something's going on, and I want to help you figure out what that is, so that you can do as well as you want to do.
Yes,
because kids want to do well. Kids want to make us happy.
Adults also want to do well too.
Sure, absolutely. Right. I'm sorry. Everybody wants to do well. Everybody wants to make the people in their lives happy. And everybody does well when they can.
Yes.
So if they're not doing well, there's a skill deficit somewhere. And we want to find out what that skill deficit is. And it could be all kinds of stuff. It could be like homework stuff. It could be that planning and prioritizing stuff. It could be emotional management. It could be communication skills. It could be social skills. You have to talk to your kid to figure out what the deficits are and take away the end game, right? Like when we were talking earlier about, I don't remember who we were talking to that was trying to set goals and have accountability partners and didn't have a really solid plan of where they wanted to go. They were just trying to already be there already. It's not about getting the A. It's not about getting a C. It's about what's going on right now in this moment. What happened last semester? What's going on still leading into next semester? And what are the rapids that we need to learn to navigate? And then how are we going to figure out how to navigate those rapids? And that part, all of that stuff is where the school team comes in.
And I just want to add to that too. I think it's so important as, I wasn't diagnosed until I was in college. And so the number of times that I got the message that you just need to try harder, when in fact I was trying profoundly hard, where it's real easy for someone to just kind of get into that learned helplessness, because it's like how as a kid, how do you explain that you are trying hard when the outcomes look like you're not, right? And so I think it's take the assumption that your kid really is trying their best and they really are putting in that effort. And so just try to imagine what would it be like to be trying your best at doing something and come nowhere close to the outcome that you're looking for. So I think it starts with that empathetic response and really asking questions, and you got to kind of play the long game with this, because it's when by the time that so many adults that I get to work with, we're dealing with more than just ADHD. We are dealing with years and years of shame and all of that. And so one of the things that we can do as parents is really be in this with our kids and not be pushing our kids to the point where it's a battle, right? Because this is just those simple reminders for ourselves as parents that yes, your kid might be a certain age biologically, but developmentally, subtract 2 or 3 years, that's where they're at on their functioning level for these things. So
to put this in physical terms, right? Eric is what, 6'2" something tall?
1 and shrinking.
6'1". Eric is 6'1". I'm 5'6".
It's
right?
so cute.
If there's something on the top shelf, right? And Will was like, Brendan, get that thing off the top shelf. And there's no ladder or step stool or anything. I can try really hard all day. I'm never getting the thing off the top shelf, right? Mm-hmm. And then Eric can roll in and grab it and be like, here you go. What was so hard? Because Eric is like physically neurotypical and I am physically ADHD. And in this case, and it's easy to miss, oh, you have this deficit. Like you're a full 7 inches shorter than me, not to mention arm length, right? I mean, I've got ups. I can jump really high. There are still shelves that I'm not going to get to. And so that's kind of what's going on for your kid is he can try hard all day and it might look like he's lazy, but he's not, because lazy doesn't exist. Lazy is learned helplessness brought about by a lack of skills. He needs to learn some skills.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of felt like I got thinking about back to his IEP that it felt like they basically, the message was try harder.
Yeah.
And
yeah. That's not a thing. How? Try different.
Yeah. And
yeah.
And I think there's a nuance to that messaging too. And I think we have to be careful too, because it's like, try differently also is hard. Right. And so I think we have to acknowledge that the trying is hard. Right. And be trying differently still may be working harder than other people have to work. But don't just keep trying the same thing harder. All right, let's go to our next question, which is Laura. Laura asks, how do you manage the tendency to ignore your calendar / to-do list? I always start with the quote, calendaring / task breakdown process with so much conviction, but in a few hours, I don't feel motivated. And then it just sits there for months. Cue shame avoidance spiral. Yep. Okay. So was today during our alumni session. We every once in a while we go around and we share what we call our shame gremlins. Will, I'm sorry you missed that because we were going to do it last week, prompted by you, and then you weren't there today, so we missed you.
Busy shoveling my driveway
when you absolutely should not have been shoveling your driveway. So I think we were talking about that before we hit record. He's like taking pain meds. He threw his back out, and and in line at the pharmacy for pain meds yesterday, shoveling the driveway today. Yeah. Will. All right. At least you have a standing desk, right?
Yeah.
All right. So what was the question? All right. The question was, so one of the things that I actually shared during Shame Gremlins time was it had been, I think, close to 3 weeks since I even looked at my Asana. And that happens to me sometimes. And when I had that realization, if it started with the realization, then that kind of uncomfortable feeling in my gut, and then I opened Asana. Right. And so it's as soon as you realize that you're off track, we can skip the whole beating ourselves up part. Like we really can. Like we have permission and encouragement to skip that part. Right. Just think, all right, I haven't looked at my calendar. I haven't looked at my to-do list. Don't go into this whole, why am I doing it? Just go look at the calendar. Go look at the to-do list. Right. I think we concern ourselves so much with trying to be more consistent about stuff. And I think that we are better served by trying to be more resilient, which means getting up when you've fallen down. Right. We are going to fall down. Welcome to ADHD. We are going to be inconsistent. Right. What we don't need to do is cue the itty bitty shitty committee to, sing their favorite songs in our head. Right. As we are not doing the things that we know we need to be doing. So, one of the things that you might want to look at is, in our coaching groups, and I talk about on the podcast, and Will just did a podcast episode about this, about the one thing where it asks this focusing question, which is what's the one thing you can do such by doing it that would make everything else easier or unnecessary. Now I have another variation of that question, which is the flip side of that. We've all had those days and sometimes weeks and sometimes months where we just get nothing done, right? Or we only get like maybe one thing done. So if we look at this in a different way and we ask ourselves, all right, if I only get one thing done today, what would that thing be? Because if we can accept that we have days like that, whether we have 10 really important things to do or not, right? And we look at, all right, what's the one thing that if I only get one thing done, and start there, that could be a good approach. Also, figure out what works sort of for you. For some people, they need a quick, easy win, and then they need to get and then do the more important thing. And so try out different things and just see how you respond. Because a lot of this stuff is just playing mind games with ourselves to figure out what motivates us, right? And there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just try to experiment and have a lot of self-compassion as you do it.
One of the mind games I like to play with myself is if I'm stuck and I'm like, I haven't looked at my calendar in a while and I'm feeling bad about it, I go, my calendar doesn't know that I haven't looked at it in a while, and my calendar doesn't care that I haven't looked at it in a little while. So I'm just going to go look at my calendar, and it's more effective than it probably should be for me, but it works.
Will, what about you? Do you have any tricks to help you to get back on track?
Well, I mean, it's same. Avoiding the idea of perfection being like, well, because one of the things I learned last year is that like daisy chain method or like habit tracking, where it's like I'm going to get every day in a row, is the worst method for me, because as soon as I break that chain, I'm like, everything is awful. I'm never going to do this again. And so just being like, okay, I'm not going to, if I miss a day, that's fine. Like if I want to track how often I'm doing something, I'll just be like, okay, I want to do this 10 times in the next 3 weeks. It doesn't matter if they're in a row. So it's, again, building that resilience where you're just like going, it doesn't matter that I missed a day. It doesn't matter I missed a week. It doesn't matter that I missed a month. I can always go back, check again, and look at what there's no problem with starting over. It's Like you could be like, I wanted to start my day with looking at my calendar, but now it's noon. I can't look at it now. You can start your day at noon.
And I think it's also important to just start with where you're at. One of the sort of frames that I give in my coaching groups is I talk about, so let's say you're a marathon runner and you've ran a couple marathons, but for the last few years, you've just been on the couch and you haven't done any running. And you're like, all right, I want to run a marathon again. You are not getting up and running a marathon. You should get up and walk around your block. Right. And then maybe jog around the block and then make it 2 blocks and then make it maybe 4 blocks. Planning is the same way. So if you're like in a good groove of planning and then you fall off the wagon, right, you can just truly just get past the beat yourself up part and then start back at just a basic to-do list for today. Right. And I have had to do this for myself so many times. Right. I teach this stuff and I screw this stuff up too. Right. And that's why I think that self-compassion around the stuff is just, it's the way forward. It's how you have to move through this stuff because we don't have to beat ourselves up and you don't have to do it alone. Like share with someone else that you're in the shame spiral because you haven't looked at your calendar. Right. And, so when you're in the ADHD community, whether it's in our Facebook group or elsewhere, just know that we get it and that you're not alone. And just keep it as simple as you can.
And if I can piggyback on that, whoever you feel comfortable enough sharing the fact that you haven't looked at your calendar in a while, whoever you feel comfortable sharing that with, maybe not the first time, but if you've got the same person, like if it's like a best friend or a spouse or something, maybe eventually let them know, hey, how every now and then, like every 6 months or whatever, or 3 months, or I don't know, 2 days, I share with you the fact that I haven't looked at my calendar in a while and I feel bad about it. Next time I do that, will you offer to sit next to me while I look at my calendar just in case something goes horribly wrong and I am covered in shrapnel and glass? And I'm sure they'll be like, sure, because you're not going to get covered in shrapnel and glass. It'll be fine. And now you've got a body double. You've got a little bit of a partner to help hold your hand while you look at that calendar. I've done this with my wife, so I know it works. And it'll kind of hopefully help you push through that.
This week on Hacking Your ADHD, Will talks about video games and ADHD. In this episode, he explores why people with ADHD love to play video games and whether video games are bad for us. Subscribe to these short and mindful ways to hack your ADHD. Check out Hacking Your ADHD this week and every Monday. This week, video games and ADHD. Join Will as he explores ways that you can work with your ADHD brain to do more of the things that you want to do. If you haven't checked it out, do yourself a favor. Go subscribe to Hacking Your ADHD. That's Hacking Your ADHD, available to everyone, everywhere you consume podcasts. And if you are looking for information centered around kids, check out ADHD Essentials with Brendan Mahan. Both Hacking Your ADHD and ADHD Essentials are both part of the ADHD Rewired podcast network. And mark your calendars to join us next week for our live Q&A. You can join me and Brendan Mahan from ADHD Essentials and Will Kerb from Hacking Your ADHD as we answer your questions live. We do this every second Tuesday of the month at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. If you are listening to this the day it was released, our next Q&A will be today, February 11th at 12:30 p.m. Central Time. This is a great way to be a part of the community. To register for our free Q&A, where we'll try to answer as many of your questions as possible, go to ADHDrewired.com/events. That's ADHDrewired.com/events. And we'll see you there. All right, let's, I think we have time for maybe one, possibly two more. I think Jennifer was such as willing to go live here, and I think she had maybe more than one question here. But let's cue Jennifer. Hello.
Hi. So I did have more than one question. I guess one thing was I'm in the UK. Obviously, I'm American from my accent, but I wondered if you guys have ever had anybody on the podcast to talk about people's experiences in other places, in my case, the UK, of getting diagnosed and treatment and whatnot?
I haven't.
I have some vague recollections of that. And just what I remember is that just in a lot of places, there just aren't a lot of other resources. And so like trying to find things online tends to be kind of the way to go. As far as like evaluations, I know that in a lot of places there can be pretty long wait lists for stuff, but I can't unfortunately speak specifically to that. If you are in our Facebook community, it might be a good question to post to the community, because I know we have people from all over who are there.
Cool. Well, I wondered if you had like any kind of magical collection of resources, because I got diagnosed last year on the NHS, and that was all fine, although it did take some time, as you say. But a lot of people here that I know, I seem to be like the ADHD fairy. Like 3 people have now gotten diagnosed because I've talked to them about my experience of getting diagnosed, which is quite hilarious. Or they're on the wait list. So anyway, one of the things that a lot of people I'm friends with here who are British, who want like a maybe more UK based context of resources, have commented that whilst a lot of the podcasts and whatnot that I share with them, including this one, are amazingly good, a lot of them are very American context. So that was the source of my first question. And I don't have to ask my other question if you don't have time, because I don't want to take up loads.
I would say send them to us, and when we interview them, we will have a less American context.
Well, feel free to interview me as a starter, because I listen to you guys every single week. I'd be happy to talk about it.
I mean, I could try to do a really bad accent if you'd like.
Oh, that's okay. We'll give that one a miss.
Don't ever do that again, Eric, please.
You said it, not me.
You had another question, though, about reassurances about professionals who promote non-evidence-based stuff. Can you flesh out that question?
I can give some, basically. So I listen to a lot of different ADHD podcasts and read a lot of different ADHD resources. And without naming it in particular, because I know this will go on the podcast, a couple of months ago and more recently, one of the ones in particular that has a valuable perspective, I think, in terms of having a really positive framing of ADHD. It's very like asset based, which I think is a useful reframe sometimes from some of the difficult and challenging things we have to grapple with. Featured a person promoting basically use essential oils to treat your mental health and your ADHD, which made my head explode, and I felt like there were flames on the side of my face. And then more recently has had another guest on when I tried to give it another go after letting my rage cool over the few months, where it was basically promoting, again, what if it seems to amount to like an exercise program, but it's like being touted as this non-medication radical new treatment for ADHD. I don't know. It makes it really hard to filter the information that's useful when you're looking for resources. And I guess partly my question was out of frustration, but also gratitude for you guys, because as a collective, and particularly Eric is the person who's kind of the ADHD rewired guy, you're very evidence-based and very careful to distinguish between things people talk about and things that actually have science behind them. And like that really came across strongly to me in one of your recent Q&As where, Will, you mentioned about CBD, and Eric, you had a lot to say about cannabis-based stuff, which is completely legit. And I kind of appreciate that, because people can find things useful anecdotally, but I guess I just wondered, like, do you have advice for people trying to filter that information if they're not scientists or clinicians?
It's such a good question. It's something I get so fired up about. It's interestingly, in some ways, I feel that I've become a little bit less sort of rigid about the hard evidence-based stuff, but not that I don't think it's valuable. I think it's highly valuable, and I think we should absolutely start where the body of evidence is. I think when we're looking at alternative and complementary approaches and things that just don't have an evidence base to it, I think if you are doing everything else that is evidence based and you feel like you're managing about as well as you can, I think it's okay to experiment with other stuff, to try things out. What concerns me is when whether it's an article or a podcast, they're talking about whether it's like essential oils, where they don't give a very clear, like discretionary warning that there is really no hard evidence that supports this. So in all that being said, we will probably find in time that there are certain things that those of us who are very like hard evidence, science minded people, or that are poo-pooing certain approaches right now, we may find that in time that some of those turn out to have good evidence, right? So I just think it's important to say, just because there isn't a scientific a body out there that supports a certain approach doesn't mean it's not effective. It just means there's not evidence for it to be effective. So what concerns me is how heavy the marketing is around those things. I think that it's interesting. There's a lot of interesting things out there, but I think one of the things that really gets me kind of worked up is when part of the messaging is sort of the drug-free approaches, which to me is just really like, it's this almost subliminal shaming around medication. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's when people are sort of feeding the fear of medication through these all natural approaches, right? It's just like it is preventing people from getting the help that may actually help them. And I've seen too many people who come to see me who didn't want to try medication. Their life is a complete shit show, and now they have no choice but to try medication. And now their biggest regret is why they waited so long to try medication. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's sad. It's sad to see. It's heartbreaking, right? When there are things that are out there, and medication doesn't work for everybody. Right. But it works for most people. And so when people ask me, are you pro medication? I say, absolutely. I am pro trying medication with a doctor who knows what the hell they're doing. Because, one of the other issues can be in that domain is that doctors actually often underprescribe and underdose because they're afraid, because they don't understand what they're doing. Right. So yeah, the science is out there. Unfortunately, it's not reaching enough people. So yeah, but there's a lot of different domains, in that. But if you have essential oils and like, you just like the way it makes you feel, let's use essential oil, then sprinkle some of that fairy dust on you and have a good time. Right.
Eric was like, what do you mean ADHD essentials? What, like essential oils? Like everyone's going to think you sell essential oils. And I was like, I didn't think of that when I got the name, but I have the domain name and I'm kind of locked into it now. And like my view is pretty close to Eric's, right? Like let's go with the science and then dabble in the magic if we need to dabble in the magic, right? Like that's okay. 'Cause at the very least, the placebo effect is backed up by science. So like if essential oils are going to placebo you into happiness, go nuts. But also some stuff like one of the things I'm being exposed to right now is around, it's kind of OT stuff around like physical movements and their effect on the brain and adjustments to stuff and helping sort of it sounds like anxiety management is what it sounds like to me. But I don't have a background in physical therapy and occupational therapy enough to understand what the science is behind all of this stuff. So I'm noticing that my reflex is to be like, this must be nonsense. But I'm also like, except maybe it isn't, because I don't have this background. So I need to find the time to learn about this stuff, because there could be science in there somewhere. I just don't have the time to do the research at the moment. And the people that I'm talking to have been doing that research, but I'm like, can I trust your research? Because you're also selling this. And so how can I know, right? I just did an interview with a guy who kind of in the course of the interview, this stuff came up and I was like, if I hadn't been kind of get exposed to this in some other areas, I would have been like nonsense, because he was coming on strong. But I was like, no, I've been exposed to this from other angles, so I'm willing to be like, maybe. And I kind of pushed back and was like, I'm skeptical about this, but also some of this stuff seems like I can figure it out. It can make some sense to me. So, and honestly, even some of the stuff I've heard around essential oils sounds like really anxiety management. Like Like, oh, lavender is a nice, relaxing smell. And okay, cool. Or the application of it is like, rub the essential oil down their back and anoint the big toe, which I had a conversation with someone about. I'm like, rubbing oil down your daughter's back is going to help her relax. So that's totally valid. You don't need to waste it anointing a big toe. And you could probably do this with baby oil instead of like a $48 2-ounce vial of whatever you're using, because it's going to have the same kind of relaxing scent to it. But the quality time you're spending with your kid while you do this ritual of essential oil stuff is valid. It just, you don't need to do the ritual. You can do it by reading a book. So some of this stuff is working almost despite itself, I guess. And in terms of like the experts dabbling in the woo and hooey, I guess, or maybe woo and hooey. We don't know if it's woo and hooey or not, because we're open-minded and growth mindset enough to know that maybe it is. I think that if it's mostly solid stuff, and when they dabble in the woo and hooey, they're kind of clear about it. They're like, this is stuff that, like, I don't know, but I also don't want to rule it out. Then I think you can trust them. But if they're like, this is amazing and is going to change your life, that's a different animal.
Yeah. Will, any thoughts?
Yeah.
Well, the more things something claims to cure, the less it probably cures.
Yes.
And then also just making sure that you at least have a cursory understanding of the mechanism that it's supposedly activating to help. Like with what Brendan was saying, if it calms you down, that's something, like if you have, because there's like stuff you see out there and it's just like, it just says it works. It doesn't explain how that mechanism can work or how it's like triggering anything. Like homeopathy is like, yeah, there's nothing here. It's just molecules of something. And you're like, there's no, you haven't explained a mechanism. You've just said it's going to do it. And that's where I really draw the line, is if they can't explain how you get from A to B. They're like, yeah, you just go A to C here. B, don't worry about that. That's something else.
So yeah, we support science and we're curious about magic is kind of, I think, what we're saying.
I play Dungeons and Dragons, so
he's the nerdiest of all three of us.
I doubt that.
So, I guess Will, do you play Dungeons and Dragons?
Not in years.
Oh, that sounded so sad.
Yeah. It was hard to find a good group, and kids make it even harder.
That's a valid point.
All right. So, you guys are a bunch of nerds. I love it. All right. Will, Brendan, thank you. Jennifer, thank you for your question. It's a really good, it's hard because it's, especially stuff that's like, people can put stuff out there that sounds really, really legit. And it can be hard to know kind of what's what. So, start with that, what we call the multimodal treatment for ADHD, which begins with medication, education around ADHD, environmental modification, and you go from there. CBT, behavioral therapy, those are all things that are evidence based for ADHD. Whether or not you need the magical oil with the wand with the hair of a centaur. I don't know if that works yet. I was just trying to play along with the nerddom.
I mean, I always say just start with sleep. Because sleep will make your medication work better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Will, Brendan, thank you as always. I know we didn't have a chance to get to everybody's question. If you enjoyed this live Q&A, one way you can thank me for doing this is by becoming a patron over at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. And if you want to make sure you can have some more time to get some questions answered, every fourth Tuesday of the month. Patrons who support ADHD Rewired at $25 a month or more get to hang out with me on Zoom. And sometimes we only have like 1 or 2 people. So it's an hour-long session on Zoom. So become a patron is a great way to support us. So we'll see you back here next month.
And if I can add, you want to go to the ADHD Rewired Patreon page if for no other reason than to see Eric's lovely eyelashes in the photo at the top.
My lovely eyelashes?
Your eyelashes are just looking amazing in that picture. They're like long and luxurious. Maybe it's Eric. Maybe it's Maybelline. Is what I'm saying.
This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find summaries and additional resources for each episode. You can apply to our free and secret Facebook community. You can learn more about ADHD Rewired's intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups, and sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content you won't get anywhere else. It's all at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click the Patreon button. If you're a regular listener and you're still listening to my voice, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron through our Patreon page. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to listeners, but it is not free to produce. And patrons get really cool perks. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD Rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. You can also subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube. And you can subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube and see select interviews and some other videos I've posted. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends and your family and your clients, as well as your coaches, therapists, and doctors. And if you're a coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader, and you would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at my website, ADHDrewired.com. And if you're a member of CHAD or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this podcast. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. You know, you might be the person that turns somebody on to a podcast for the very first time. And if you really love this episode, please consider hitting share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I count on you to help me spread the message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and to help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or any other podcast app that accepts ratings and reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe on this podcast on your podcast app so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Not sure where to start? In no particular order. Check out Atomic Habits by James Clear, The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk, 10% Happier, and Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. These are both by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions and Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. The One Thing by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Vaden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. Do you have trouble asking for help? Listen to The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. It's one of the best produced audiobooks I've ever heard. If you're looking for something a little bit more, say, magical, I unexpectedly fell in love with the Harry Potter series. And I don't usually listen to those kinds of books, and I loved it. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus yet, check out Brene Brown's books, starting with The Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, The Power of Vulnerability, and if you're an entrepreneur or leader in any capacity, check out her 2018 book, Dare to Lead. And Brene still is my most wanted guest, so if you know Brene, and you would be so kind to make that connection for me, I would be really, really grateful. You know who else I would like to have on the show? You. Click the podcast tab at ADHDrewired.com and then click the Be a Guest button at the top of that page and schedule a 15-minute pre-interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, keep growing, and keep connecting. Self-care is not selfish, and no matter what gets done or doesn't get done, at the end of the day, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.